But
Oh, well, then there's no way you're entirely prepared for this experience.
that's certainly a possibility. Yeah. Like these days, I don't even drink that much, to be completely honest. I had a little champagne last night though because of our release.
That's good.
Very
I
good.
mean, good excuse,
Congratulations.
good
Yeah.
reason.
I was a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
fan then.
I like
I
that the drinking has
believe
kind of decreased, like in the
Yeah.
industry. You go to conferences now, and like the amount of like more sobery events is actually quite pleasing.
are we
Yeah. At
live?
Offensive AI Con, it was like people weren't drinking as much, and
Yeah,
they wanted the music off. They were like, "We
yeah.
want to talk."
Can you just let us chat, please? That'd be
Yeah.
great.
Costin, can you check if we're live on YouTube? I believe the stream
Yes,
Oh
should
yeah,
be
yeah, we're
up.
up. We're
we're
up.
up.
We're up. Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 70 of the Three Body Problem. Special
Wow.
episode this week, obviously. If you're looking at this on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe and do all the good stuff. But if you're looking at this on YouTube, you'll see the man who's been the most shouted out on this podcast. Like your name has been dropped so much on this
And I
on this show.
appreciate it.
It's ridiculous. Dave Aitel, a member of the technical staff at OpenAI. Welcome to the show as the fourth buddy today. This is your return to the Three Body Problem. How are you?
It is. Thank you so much for having me. Really excited. Obviously, I listen every week. You know, it's a
Why?
great podcast. I think this is one of the. It's kind of bizarre that y'all have managed to make this happen so consistently. Like, it's really a testament to, like, I don't know, perseverance, something.
God.
Maybe,
Madness.
yeah,
I
like,
can't.
it's amazing.
I can't with all this
Thanks, man.
sucking up. Talk to me.
Oh,
Funny
I
too.
can take you to task, too. Last
You
week,
should.
y'all were
Wait,
like,
wait,
we
wait, we'll
can't
get to it.
No,
I want
wait,
you-
before you
Oh, all
fact
right.
check us.
whatever
Slow
you
down.
want.
We got a bunch of stuff to get to. I wanted
it.
to, we'll
Do
talk about Aardvark and your launch of Aardvark, which has been mentioned on this podcast a million times. In fact, Aardvark, when I look on Google for Aardvark, it just points back to our podcast. So that's kind of
That's it.
pretty cool. Before we get started, Juanito and Costin are back from Binding Hook Live in London. Quickly, how was that? A quick update?
Costin, you want to start?
Go ahead, go. You are the keynote, so
Come on.
I was the
It
lightning talk.
it was a
Go.
great. It was actually a really great event. Max Meets put this together. Binding Hook is becoming more of a thing, right? Like more of like a publication. They're putting out like cool reports, and it was a really interesting like 1 day thing. We were in the middle of like a circular theater, and they would just arrange the seats around you so you actually like it kind of forced it to feel more like a conversation with the audience. And considering that it was like a bunch of policy folks, some academics, some a bunch of our practitioner friends, it was actually a really interesting crowd for some of the topics that got covered. So I really appreciated it. I felt like I finally got my talk kind of ironed out a bit, right? Like the LabsCon keynote, I feel like it finally sort of landed the right way. So I've just kind of been like iterating on that, and to be honest, a shout out to Max Meets who like helped me clean that up, because conceptually I was a complete knot with all this stuff, and Max was the one who kind of guided me to a better framing there.
Good, I like that. Costin, how is Bucharest? All is well?
Bucharest is pretty hot these days, which is kind of unusual. It was very cold, almost 0 degrees Celsius, and now it's like 20 something. So it oscillates. London was also very good. I really enjoyed Juan's talk. It's funny. I tried to record all of Juan's talks when I can do that, and he allows me. And I know he was like taking photos of my talk as well. Although it was not allowed, but Juan, like Jags, is always allowed to take photos during my talks. And I tried to put that through ChatGPT to summarize it. And I still find it funny that it breaks my local models. Whenever I run local models with 4K token window, they just crash. Like it's just too philosophic, too advanced for us. And to make it work, you need to increase the window to like 15K, 20K, and so on. So I think it was super interesting. There were a number of talks that unfortunately we cannot discuss, but they were pretty interesting, and shout outs to our friends there, Eugenio, to Selena, who also had a talk. I think the speakers list is public for Binding Hook, and of course to Max for putting it together.
And just to segue quickly, Juanito's talk, the big theme of it was that AI is coming to help us fix this cybersecurity project that's broken. And that's a perfect segue into OpenAI announcing yesterday the private beta availability of OpenAI Aardvark. Dave, this is like, what is your connection to Aardvark?
Well, I definitely named it to answer Chris Rolfe on Twitter. And I think when I first
Why
started
is it called
working,
Aardvark then, since you named it?
because aardvarks eat bugs.
I gotcha.
And also, it's a good name, I think.
It is a good name.
So, when I first started at OpenAI on the podcast, y'all were like, he must be typing something, right? Like, they didn't hire him for no reason, and that's correct, right? Like, and I don't think, honestly, I think Aardvark is a very big project, and I really am not like the only or even the primary mind behind Aardvark, aside from the name. I did name it. But I think, the
give me
fundamental...
the big picture pitch. Give me the big picture pitch from
actually,
your side.
actually, can we pull back a little bit, right? Like what you mentioned that they they hired you and we expected you to type. What was the pitch for hiring you, if you don't mind me asking? Right, like, because there's the project, right, like the promise, and then there's where you end up kind of landing it. And I think both of those things are worth discussing, even just in understanding OpenAI's approach to security as a thing, right, outside of itself.
Well, I think Matt Knight, who at the time was the CISO of OpenAI, I think rightfully understood that there was a huge opportunity. And this was back when, like, I think GPT-4 Turbo was... it literally was less than a year ago and still feels like from a different era. I think he looked at the curve and he's like, we're going to need to see how we can make AI apply to security. And we need a full-time position for that because everyone else is actually very busy doing security in the security group. Which is, it's like, it's an, as you know, like, I think better than almost any other three people, it's an endless, humongous tidal wave of just things you have to do immediately. And so I think he carved out a couple full-time places, and he's like, we need people to focus on the future. And I luckily managed to find one of those spots, realistically, is kind of where it is. I think that could have looked like a lot of different things. Matt Knight was, I think, in his own way, smart enough to just let me do whatever I wanted to do, and like type various and try things. And like, he gave me the support of, the team of people that's here. Actually, everyone here is very responsive. So I ended up talking to a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And, one day committed something that was called Aardvark, which actually is not at all what we ended up shipping as Aardvark.
What was the original idea then?
Well, the original idea was not too far off, right? And I think the idea is not complicated, right? But I think people see what we have presented, and maybe they don't. The idea is not actually presented in that document, right? Like the idea
Right.
to address some of the things Jags has said on this.
Wait a second. Just give me the big
Don't
picture.
stop him from addressing the things I've said. Let him address the things I've said.
Yeah, I will try to provide just some context because I think this is actually one of the more educated in both AI and security and its intersection audiences on the internet, right? Like, so, and I think I have a really different picture of how you build AI applications than I think most people do. And especially in contrast with AIXCC, which I thought was an amazing experiment. I thought Perry came up with, I think, a lot of foresight to put that together. And no matter what you think of the results, because I actually don't think people understand the results, to be honest. But no matter what you think of them, it was a fantastic experiment to run. But the way I draw into AI applications of all types, security is an important one, is that I want to have a dial where as you increase the amount of money and time and energy you're willing to spend, the intelligence of the output increases linearly, ideally, and sort of fills in that curve. So if you spend $10, you get bugs that are $10 bugs. If you spend $500,000, you get bugs that are $500,000 bugs. which is a very different problem from the one that AIXCC was trying to measure, which was essentially coverage. So there's a lot of different things about, like, honestly, just my perspective on what you're looking for this space, and the resources that OpenAI has, and the ability to scale up into this sort of thing. And look, I think it's almost bad because, Jags is like, oh, we're getting tokens, and realistically, OpenAI does not sell tokens. We sell intelligence, right? Like, which is a very different thing. And I try to, like, explain that to people, and it's actually very confusing because we build in tokens, right? Like, so, like, and Jags has been very clean on pointing this out. He's like, a token is not just a token. A token is actually a measure of intelligence that you have spent energy on and are returning to me. And sometimes it's a measure of many pieces of intelligence, right? Because the token is the result of a chain of thought that could be like hundreds of lines of stuff. So what is Aardvark? And I think the answer is we're applying intelligence to some of the most important security problems on the planet and trying to move the actual dial. And that's realistically what it is. That's what it's always been. I think when you came to Jags came to the OpenAI security event 6 months ago, I can't even remember how many months that was.
Yeah.
That's what we
RSA
tried
time.
to portray. And measuring this, it's actually really complicated. It's easy for me to say this on a podcast. It's really hard to actually do. And that's why, I want to point out we have a whole team of amazing engineers and researchers behind it. It's, my part of it was like, realistically, the name. That's probably, and maybe a little bit more typing, but mostly the name.
Mostly the name.
Just for the folks in the audience who may not be familiar, may not have listened to the previous episodes and are new to the podcast, you guys describe Aardvark as continuously analyzes source code repositories to identify vulnerabilities, assess exploitability, prioritize severity, and propose targeted patches. The top line question for me is how much of a human is involved here? How much of it is fully AI automated? Who does what's the manual process involved?
We got a lot of questions, or at least I did on my Signal afterwards. And they're like, okay, how many CVEs have you found, right? Like, how good are those CVEs? And the reality is...
Great question, by the way.
Great question. Because the answer is like, everyone wants to show their work, right? And people compare us to Big Sleep, and they've got an online updating spreadsheet of every bug they've found and patched, which is great.
And you don't. Deliberately
No, we explicitly don't. I think at the scale that we're about to all be operating in this space, it does not make sense to try to like name and shame every developer, every project that you found a bug in. Occasionally they give you credit, and that's sometimes useful. And sometimes they want to warn their customers that a bug was found, and that's great. But for the most part, figuring out that, okay, this applies to 100 people maybe I don't know. It's just not as important as people like to think it is. But you also don't want to drown. You don't want to be mean to developers. And I think this is kind of like the thing is like...
Is that it though? It's like
well, look at what happened with
putting a
curl.
Public issue tracker is being rude to developers.
It's a little mean.
Really?
You know what? It's naming and shaming at a certain level. And it's if you get it wrong, that can be a problem. I don't want to ever be in a position where a developer thinks that we are focused on blaming them for bad code or anything like that. We're here to help is honestly the message. And we're trying to, if you read our updated disclosure policy, which we spent a lot more time on than you might think, that was the message. Realistically, is we're here to help, not we're here to like get a lot of press off your work, if that makes any sense.
You didn't answer my question. Sorry, Juan. You didn't answer my question though. How much of this work is manual versus like when you're proposing a fix or you're validating a bug? Is Dave Aitel personally involved in the process and at what stage?
I mean, I would be personally involved if there was an open source bug we thought was worth reporting and we were reporting it to the vendor or the maintainer, and we need to make sure it's 100% accurate. So the things that we report...
everything that gets reported has a human component.
For now. Because...
Well,
that is...
Why is this like...
Wait. We're starting too far down the path. And honestly, like, I want to have like really big picture conversations about this, and it's almost all I've gotten to have are really big picture conversations. But since like Dave, since you're here and like Costin's already applied to the private beta, I'm applying to the private beta. But like, can you just take us back to like the simplest part of this? It's like, what does it look like to run Aardvark? Like, what are you doing? What are you getting out of it? Like, how much? Because I can see.
Yeah,
I'm
it's not confusing.
I'm assuming the human part of this is like how much you're having to like check and analyze what comes out of it, and like, is it right? And what do we do with this and severity? But like, basically, like, we've never seen this thing before. Like, what's the demo version of it? Right.
We didn't put any screenshots out, and part of the reason for that is that literally the screens are changing every day. I personally, after this call, have to go merge a front end like code-based thing to change a dialog box. So and when I'm doing front end work, we're winning. It's actually pretty fun. I'm having a good time. But like, what does it look like? It looks like what you would expect it to look like, and it's going to look different in 3 weeks from what it does now. The basic workflow is exactly what you would expect from a security engineer's perspective. Bugs appear, they get triaged, they get run through the validator that we're pretty happy about, honestly, and then they get patched, and you can choose to accept that patch or not. Right, so that's kind of where the human is coming in right now. That said, there's other aspects to it that I'm not going to go into necessarily, where a human could put input into it and, in theory, make it better. Default is pretty good though, right? So like, it's really, security is about handling volume, avoiding false positives, and just straight up, on an act, like we run it on our monorepo, which has, as you might imagine, a lot of volume. Right. So it's tuned to avoid drowning you, if that makes any sense.
For the bugs, so presumably, right, like this thing is running, it's spotting bugs. Since you said, right, like Ryan's trying to come in hot, and I'm doing my best not to seem like
I'm asking the basic, obvious top-line questions.
You're asking the right questions, and I'm saying that because like I've been trying my best not to just be standing so hard because I'm excited about this that like I'm uncritical. So I'm glad that you're asking them. But like, even before we get there, right? You mentioned, Ray, that you don't have like a wall of CVEs, but it sounds like you've gotten way more bugs than, presumably you've gotten way more bugs than you have actually reported or chosen to make like a public thing out of. I think the question is, for me, what are the parameters under which you see this thing working and not working? Like, where are its limitations, right? Like, are you seeing this as like Aardvark is just phenomenal at all these like small bugs that eventually add up to big bugs? Is it actually just suddenly spotting, Sean Heelan style O3 found an O-Day in the kernel type things, and sometimes they're small bugs and sometimes they're FPs? Like, kind of where are you on the experimental side of like, we're running this thing and like, what the hell's coming out of it?
Well, I think actually you have another question buried in there, which is really good, which is, how do you even know how good you are, right? Like, a big part of this was building the right evals, and at a very large sort of like, you need a lot of volume, you need actually a subjective understanding of the bugs as well, which is why I'm here, is one of those reasons. It's like, I need to be able to look at a bug and say, oh, this was a hard bug to find, or it was an easy bug to find, right? Like, or, oh, it was wrong about it, but it was kind of got the right bug, but it was wrong about how it found it, right? Like, these are all really complicated parts of the science. And I think that doing that right is something that I think involved a lot of energy, but I don't think like we're unique in looking at these problems in this way, right? So there's a large set of people out there, like Big Sleep being one of them, that are looking at it slightly differently. And I think you've come to the right sort of understanding that, like, is this going to change things in general? Yeah, it will. So it was like, understanding that a bug is real is one problem. Understanding that it has an impact is another problem. Understanding if it's reachable in certain rare circumstances that are still important is yet another problem. So you have to start addressing all of these very weird problems when you start building a product like this. It's not just like, oh, I'm scanning code and there's a bug there, which is what people think we're doing, which is fine, right? Like, in the end, if they get a bug and they click fix, and everything's fixed, fantastic.
Costin, you haven't said much. What are you have applied for the private beta. What is your expectation for Aardvark? What are you hoping to use Aardvark for?
I mean, I haven't said anything because I was thinking. First of all, I would be like very curious to ask Dave. Does this actually emulate his own thinking, or is it like a totally new approach to finding bugs? Like, how does it actually work? Is it like just replicating your own mental processes or other bug hunters, or is it a totally new approach to bug hunting whatsoever?
Honestly, it's a great question. I mean, you're assuming I'm really good at bug hunting, which I'm honestly not. I'm like the reason I invested so much in fuzzers 25 years ago is because I'm bad at this, right? Like, and this is just another example of like investing in a reasoning engine, which is what a fuzzer is as well, because I don't want to reason because I'm lazy and it's difficult for my tiny brain that's much better at like spotting good fruit on a tree than it is at spotting a plus sign that doesn't deserve to be in OpenSSH code, right? So I think, is it finding things that humans would never find? Maybe, right? Like this is the it's definitely doing it we already know it. Everybody knows these things operate at a scale no human could find, right? Like there's just not enough humans who can do this or want to do this, or we would pay to do this, to find the bugs we want to find, to actually get secure by not design, but by like, it should be part of your SDLC.
With those words.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. I think in maybe 3 months, if your SDLC does not include one of these tools, then it's broken.
Yeah.
And it may be because it finds bugs that no human will find, but even if it's just because it finds bugs that humans find but are too lazy to find or too expensive to apply to the problem, that's fine too.
Well,
right?
so
Like,
that's something you're hitting on, something that like is very near and dear to me. And part of the reason we mentioned the binding hook talk from Monday is actually that like this was sort of like the main topic of my keynote, which was right, like you let slip or sort of purposefully said this offhand comment the first time that you talked about Aardvark, and where you just said, well, and what we realized, we're analyzing all these commits, and 1 to 2% of commits introduce bugs. And I see that refined in the blog to like 1.2% of commits. And I'd love to know more about sort of how far that, what you're basing that on, and how much, so you're going through and whatnot. But that has a really interesting implication, I think, that has not been discussed before, right? Like, to me, that's almost like, from an experimental research standpoint, we're basically saying there's a measure of software entropy. Like there's a statistical reality of like how our software is disintegrating as it's being maintained to some degree, right? Like 1 to 2% of commits introduces something. It might just be like some ephemeral or like minor bug, some minor error, like you said, right? Some human being could find this kind of bug if they applied themselves to it, but it's not necessarily cost efficient. It's not necessarily how we want to spend our time. But think about what that entails, or at least what it entails to me is this idea that like, even if we like, just by not having something or somebody that's constantly sort of grooming this code base as it's being expanded, it's essentially disintegrating to some degree, right?
yeah, there's an entropic force that you feel, right, in all code bases. And to be fair, I mean, the numbers that we look at, we did initial, this is very early on Aardvark with an early model with early toolkits. And I went through and did a bunch of open source C and C++ repositories. And C and C++ are very hard to write correct code in. And a lot of these code bases were pretty security relevant, right? So it's sort of like, these were not code bases where a mistake would cause no issue. So maybe some percentage of those bugs is security relevant, right? But 1.2 to 2, it was weird that the numbers were on average very similar. Like, I think initially we had like 1.7, and then if you look at like particular subsets of those, because it doesn't matter just that there's a bug committed, it also matters that it's still in the current version as well, which, if you think about it, is its own very difficult problem, right? Like if a commit introduces a bug, is that bug still relevant 5 commits later, or has something changed to make that not relevant, right? There's a million really hard problems that we had to solve to get this product out the door.
So what's the vision then? Like what happens? This is something, going back to the event that you put together, right? Like something that was pretty cool. Sam Altman came and sort of spoke with Matt and sort of spoke to all of us and took some questions. And one of the questions, having seen Aardvark that morning as like the announcement, right, was, I basically asked like, so are you going to run this over a bunch of open source? Is this a thing that you guys start to kind of do on behalf of the open source community? Is this a thing that we expect others to pay for to run? Like if we're saying in 3 months, like your SDLC, your CI/CD pipeline, your whatever needs to include this thing that's like constantly burning tokens, constantly reasoning over your code base to maintain it. What's the vision for the open source community, right? Like, is there an element where we all sort of put some tokens in a pot and try to keep things, try to improve the things that everybody's relying on, or like, what happens here?
Well, let me just answer that with, you asked the exact same question to Sam, and Sam said, yeah, we want to help the world. That's why we're in this game. Right? Like, and I think, I know as much as like the some of it's, perhaps a marketing message in many people's eyes.
Of course.
But it's also how the company is run. And the company is structured as, a public benefit corporation for a reason. And it also has that little like history and internal feeling to it, right? So it's sort of like, I can't say what the company's going to do. I don't speak for OpenAI. I speak for my own tiny, vision. I don't have the whole vision of Aardvark, right? The vision is the company's vision. But do I think it would be cool if, like, we helped the world with Aardvark? I would feel really proud of that.
What does
right?
that
Like,
look like in your mind, though? Helping the world with Artvark. What is that like? What does success look like to you?
I mean, it could look like any number of things where code is better than it used to be. And that does not necessarily mean you dump 1,000 bugs on every open source developer and say, hey, go fix these, right? Like, I feel like they view that as hostile, as adding to their workload, and they're not wrong completely. The level of validation that you have to do per bug to make it worth it to them is, and also they have their own triage and their own important features they're building, their own development culture. It's all the same. So we want to be good partners. I think that's even in the most recent video that Sam Altman put out, there was a huge slice of the pie that was partnership, and that doesn't necessarily mean we as OpenAI secure everything. It sometimes means we partner with other companies to secure things, or other organizations, not all commercial companies, right? And also, like, I think that's not a bad thing, because we don't have the whole picture, and we certainly don't have a big team, right? Like, we're actually a pretty small company trying to do big things. And if you might have noticed, we have a lot on our plates.
What do you make of Big Sleep?
I think they took a different technical direction, but they've put a lot of time and energy into it, and they have a lot of resources, and it looks good, right? Like, it also looks like they've found a lot of bugs. I know that I saw a tweet earlier this week where one of the developers was like, I'm really proud of the bugs it's finding in Quick.js because it says our model can reason over complicated JavaScript. And I'm like, that's cool. That's awesome. I don't think I can do bugs. That. I mean, I took some classes. I took Amy Burnett's class not too long ago. And so I can reason over JavaScript, but it's not fun for any of us to do, right? So I would just say, like, I think Big Sleep has a different technological take. I think it's the wrong take. As you've heard me at Offensive AI Con say, like, look, I just don't think fuzzing is part of the picture right now. I think reasoning is part of the picture. That, the reality is they have a good model, right? Like, in theory, they have models. They can run them. They can spend energy and time on it. And they have a good security team that knows what they're doing with triage.
is fuzzing the wrong thing? So this is actually a pretty interesting kind of holy war, I feel, in some of the Vol development circles, and like I don't know that any of us really can speak to it, or the three of us can speak to it. But it's so fascinating to me how much folks like there is this divide, right? Like the static analysis, you need to kind of reason over these things and understand what's going on, versus the like, bitter lesson. No, we're just going to fuss the absolute shit out of these code bases, which I think Google has kind of really taken to the extreme in sort of bug finding and having P0. But you seem staunchly against the notion of fuzzing. Like, is that in this context, is that the thing that's sort of separating from the big sleep approach? And like, why are you so against it in developing this stuff?
Well, I would almost pose it as another question, right? Which is like, what is the most energy efficient way to reason over code? And fuzzing is reasoning, right? And I think there's nothing wrong with fuzzing, and actually building the harnesses that they've built for all those open source libraries allows them to validate bugs at scale in a really important way, and have a really like when Big Sleep finds a bug in FFmpeg or something by crashing something, that's fantastic, right? Like they can see exactly the path it takes from input to crash, and that's amazing. It has weaknesses though, and I think the best way to reason over code is to reason over the code, and I think you introduce noise into the system when you add other things to it. So that is a different take, but part of it's me believing in the models, and that's almost a religious feeling, when you look at the exponentials that most model labs are seeing.
Costin, sorry, I want to go back to the question Costin asked about whether you're starting to see new things popping in, and you said you're hopeful and so on. Are there any examples of where you see the model thinking differently from the traditional way a pen tester thinks, or a traditional way a bug hunter thinks, or an exploit writer thinks? Are you starting to see examples of the AI going in a direction that, wow, and you say you expect that to change? Like, what are you hoping to accomplish? What new you think can pop out of that'll change the world as you?
I think the model understands software better than any human does. And I think that's true now for the good models. When you use like the big ones, it's not true for the models Costin's running in his basement. But I would not even say that I'm the best judge. I would say Thomas Shadwell is a really good judge of this. I think he's an amazing bug finder. I was really excited to work with him when I came to OpenAI, and he was initially one of the people that judged the results of our initial Aardvark versions. And I think he said on Twitter that it finds bugs that he thinks are really cool. And beyond that, like, it's a subjective call if it's going to find bugs that humans can't or don't find. It comes down, there's no eval for that, right? Like, it comes down to, does it find bugs that Thomas thinks are cool? That's kind of the only metric I have for some of these things. And those are like, he specializes in very complicated web bugs, which are not things I specialize in. You got an old format string bug, I can take it there. But like, I'm not hopped up on some of the latest DOM challenges.
Can I ask you like a very simple question? What is, in your opinion, the most interesting bug it found so far?
Interesting, not necessarily high severity, not necessarily, big product, but interesting.
It's like when people come and say, hey, what's the most interesting virus you ever researched? And it can be like whatever, I don't know, Stuxnet, equation, whatever. So, like, in your opinion, what's the most interesting bug it found so far?
I think it's a really good question, actually. It's like, I think asking someone what their favorite exploit is it's almost like a personality test, right? In a way. And what it finds that I would not have expected it to find initially are complicated logic flaws. And that requires understanding state tables, because that was something that was actually impossible 2 years ago. We would all run it through Halvar Flake's little state table bug finding thing. We ran every model through that, and they all couldn't handle it. And then 01 came out, and I tested O1 against it. And I'm like, actually, O1 can handle it just fine. And then I obfuscated it and I tried to confuse it. And O1 was like, no, I understand the states that are happening in this program. And in fact, this program is broken. And that's true, like for really big enterprise software, that's the kind of thing that makes a huge difference. Huge. I think some of the bugs Aardvark has found has saved OpenAI millions of dollars. Absolutely millions of dollars. Just like we have made.
Can you expand on that for a little bit? Linger and expand on that a little bit. Like, what does that mean?
You know, bugs that would have even not necessarily been security bugs, but have introduced stability issues in, you know, pieces of the enterprise that would have interrupted training, for example. Right? Like a training run is not cheap. And when they break, sometimes they break in very confusing ways that take a team of engineers to figure out. And if Artvark is finding those bugs ahead of time, that's an entire team for an entire week, plus the training run succeeding. That is millions of dollars. And that's true for all these big enterprises, right? Like the cost of finding a bug, they are willing to spend $100,000 to find one important bug, right? Like that's a real thing because it saves you $1 million. Like the numbers work. And that's why I think focusing on that side of things, it's not just about finding every bug. It's about finding important bugs.
From finding a bug to fixing a bug, like how much of a distance is there, right? Like I think it's sort of, we're used to the notion of, you know, if a human being understood the thing, then clearly a human being kind of knows how to go about fixing the thing. Is that parallelized? Like, is this a sort of parallel development when it comes to the models? Like Aardvark already gets the bug and knows the bug is there, therefore we have like a really easy path to correcting the bug, or is it like a whole different challenge that we need to take on? I don't think that's even
true for humans, right? Like bug finders are not always the enterprise developer that you need to fix a bug properly. Depending on the bug, right? Like I could probably fix a bunch of bugs in a bunch of random little C libraries. I'd probably still ask the model to do it for me these days, but I could probably do it, right? If I find a bug, I used to be able to do that. But these days, the bugs are complicated. They're multi-layered. The impact of the fixes are multi-layered. These are two separate problems. You have to solve them both. You have to measure them both, right? Like this is part of the massive engineering that goes into a product like this.
I want to ask specifically about the private beta. Is there information on whether the data boundaries, retention, model training? Are you scanning private code? What leaves the repo? Is there an on-prem versus is it cloud only? Can you just dig a little deeper on what I'm applying for?
I mean, some of those things I would leave to the go-to-market team and the team. But let me just point out, like, yes, obviously there was a huge security team that came through that was not me to look at the code. Names that you would know because there's a lot of pretty, you know, famous engineers working at OpenAI now who do security work like this. You know, it's not something I would have signed off on if we thought it was providing a lot of risk for the customers. Like,
yeah, but that's a lot of trust me, bro, right? Like you're giving me the same trust me, bro, that the big sleep people gave me when we questioned whether they had preemptively blocked an APT from like it's.
Or maybe we'll get SOC certified or something. I don't know.
No, I'm serious. It's like
that's harder than building Aardvark, I think. Yeah,
I probably would be.
Yeah,
like there's efforts have been. It's not like it is not just fling your code to the wind. Efforts have been made to provide some confidentiality and like I can't look at our customers' code that they're running through Aardvark. You know, like there's no way for me to do that. So
I always assume you're reading my prompts and stuff. Just
there's also no way for me to do that. Just to make you feel better. Like even if I had your org ID or whatever it is, I cannot read your code. And I want to point out, I also don't choose who gets selected for the private beta. You know, obviously
this is you preparing us for rejection.
Rejections.
Right, yeah. I see how this works.
It's definitely not me who would reject you. Let's just put it that way.
How does one qualify?
I think the team is looking at all the people who submitted, and they're looking for people who would add a lot of value to, you know, helping build the product. And that's actually a lot of things. It does not necessarily mean you have to be a 300,000 person company, but you want a couple of those at least, right? So we have alpha customers.
Let's put it differently.
You know?
What are you hoping to get out of the beta, right? Because when I got to be in the beta for some of the like model testing for some of the earlier models, and like you obviously wanted there was mostly like it seemed to be an emphasis on like safety testing, right? What are the guardrails? What are the things that aren't like really quite working? For something like this, which I don't know if I've ever seen an OpenAI beta for something that I don't know. I want to say that that's this kind of product. Like it seems more niche, right? Like more specific. What are you hoping to get out of it?
And so you want variety, is the truth. You want variety. I don't think we're like specifically choosing people to red team it. I haven't heard anything about that, but maybe that's a good thing to try actually. So maybe I will see if we can throw that into the mix. But it's about getting variety so that you're not like, oh, I'm only serving enterprise customers well. I'm only serving small shops well, or whatever it is.
How do you see Aardvark, Big Sleep, and all the other people investing in these types of things affecting the traditional pen test market, red team market? And like, is there a replacement of the human component that industry is like? Help me understand how you think about where the business implications for that industry.
I would even say I actually had a very brief discussion with a VC this morning, and he's like, "Oh, it's good that we didn't invest too heavily in this place because we see you're moving into it." I'm like, I don't think any of these companies are where they are now is where they're going to end up. Right? Like, I think that everybody in this space is rapidly trying to learn lessons and understand the market and understand the technology. And the things you learned a year ago may not even apply anymore. The models have changed. You may not need whole segments of your code base if you built a big code base to do certain things. That may be completely irrelevant next month. So I would just say that, like, I think there's chaos. But that's great because, as this podcast has said over and over and over, security is pretty broken, right? Like, it's in a terrible state, and it has been for as long as you can remember, right? Like this software is bad. That doesn't mean the software people weren't trying hard. Sometimes they weren't, but as you've pointed out, but fixing the system is going to require change, and I think AI is at least a lever to move it a little bit.
You guys are pitching it as like changing the world and not really moving it a little bit. And this is why I push back on, like, it's all marketing and not much evidence of this kind of groundbreaking world, especially with the security things. Like, I'm asking you some questions here, some basic questions that we can't even get.
I would love to hear from you what metrics you would use to measure big change in this space. Like, if there weren't O days in a particular, new, like in the Linux kernel, or I don't know, pick a piece of software, Chrome, I don't know, whatever it is, for a month or two, right? Like, would you be like, hey, that's weird, like something's changed, right? So it's sort of like there's going to be like a collection of all these little events are going to start happening. We're going to all of a sudden start seeing, oh, well, actually, secure software's better now. That would be amazing.
Man, that's hard.
You're having a hard time. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Ryan is such a skeptic here. I'm standing too hard. Like we're totally off balance right now.
We're running around the tail. I'm like more, let's ask the practical questions. So if Ivanti, single them out because they are like very popular in our Friday radio shows. Big fans. So if Ivanti started using Artvark, do you think it will make a significant difference in the amount of bugs people find in their products 1 year after they start using Artvark? Very practical, in your opinion.
Let me answer that with a couple statements. One, I think what you're looking for from Ivanti and other members of this entire industry, especially the security industry, is that they adopt an SDLC that produces results. Two, I would say that putting an AI tool in your code quality regime is part of a good SDLC going forward. Assuming you have the budget for it, because tokens cost money. But you should, because bugs cost more money. So, do I think it would make a difference in any of the company in legacy code? Yes, so much yes, right? Like especially legacy code. It's harder to make a difference in code that's really good, or like very humongous, maybe. Like V8 like is actually a hard code base to make a difference in. Like it's changing really fast, but there's like, like it's layers and layers and layers and layers of stuff, right? So I would say things like Avanti and other people who are highly exposed, who need a refresh on their SDLC, those are big target markets for all of these types of techniques. I would love to see them use an SDLC that included Aardvark.
And here's another practical question. Does it handle other things like solidity, for instance? So let's say I write smart contracts for those fans of the show who are into cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and so on. And there's a huge market in security assessment of smart contracts. Can I loop Aardvark into my solidity development life cycle, and will it find bugs and exploitation of smart contracts that typically, I don't know, Lazarus and North Korean APTs exploit on a daily basis?
Well, I treat cryptocurrency as the demon it is and never touch it or think about it because it's a little bit of a mind poison. That said, I did run an early version of Aardvark against what someone pointed me at, which was like a bunch of like almost an eval for bugs in smart contracts in Solidity things, and it had 100% on finding the bugs.
That's formidable.
But it is very difficult to do a proper eval there, and I won't claim that was a proper eval because I'm always like, oh, did it memorize those bugs? Did it like, was there something in the training set? And I don't think so, but I don't know so, right? So, and this is why it's very hard for me to say specifically, but does it understand that horrible JavaScript that should never exist on the internet better than a human does? Yes. And should you, if you're at all smart, run those contracts through Aardvark before you use them? Yeah, you should.
I think on that point about like evals, right? Like I keep finding myself going back to that Sean Heelan blog post about finding O days with O3, right? Like I think that was like a bit of a not so much an oh shit moment as much as it felt like a real practitioner stepped in and kind of cut through a lot of the bullshit, right? Like we had a bunch of companies. I was on a State Department delegation where I watched somebody from, I want to say Scale AI or somewhere else, basically lie to a president and say, oh, yeah, no, well, now our AIs like are finding O days, like finding vulnerabilities regularly. And we all knew it was bullshit. When you see Sean Heelan jump in and go, hey, O3 just found, not just found an O day that Sean had found that obviously wasn't in any training set because he had just discovered it and it wasn't patched yet. And then it went and found its own O day as he was testing it. I think that was the moment that for me, I was like, okay, we have hit some level of capabilities where this is meaningful. And what was interesting about his post was seeing sort of the non-determinism of it, of him saying like, okay, I ran this thing 100 times with this context, built in this way, with these lines of code, with this blah, blah, blah. And like 7 out of 100 times, we O3 found the bug. And I don't know, 3 out of 100 times Claude found the bug and whatnot. Where do you see that side? Like, that's the question everyone keeps asking, right? Of like sort of O days and weaponization on one end. But I also say like the non-determinism of this stuff as far as like building a product that's supposed to do this consistently. Like, am I supposed to sit there and run Aardvark over the code base 100 times and then go 3 out of 100, we got this? Or like, how do you lean into that? That would be a horrible
user experience.
Right.
Right? Like, that would be the worst. Right? And I also just don't think human beings want that many dials on a product. Right? So, there is non-determinism in all these products. There's also non-determinism in every pen test you get and every code review you buy. Right. And it's always been true that when you buy a pen test, you also kind of want to know who's going to be on the pen test because every person is so different. And I don't think that's bad necessarily. It is annoying. Evaluations are really hard in this space, right? That's why, the ML teams all have like a pass at 5, pass at 10, pass at, 100, right? Like running an eval in this space is very difficult. It's really hard. So I would just say you're not wrong. That's not the user interface that I'm hoping for, and I'm not a UX engineer, but we've done a lot of that work for you in terms of reliability and understanding, what does it mean to truly find a bug? How do you compare two bugs to each other? How do you get normalization across criticality levels? There's a lot of problems we had to address, and those aren't even, that's just half of like the easy stuff. Realistically, we have a lot of work that we haven't talked about because it's not ready yet.
Is there a subset of bug that the AI is better at that we feel like we eliminate? It's like memory safety. Is that something that the AI can eliminate eventually?
Well,
if we get to the standardization that Juan is
right?
asking for.
Memory safety is huge, right? It's like you're not going to empty the ocean, but the AI is much better at finding off by ones than really anything else, even a human being. Which is what if you notice the OpenSSH bug we found, it was an off by one. And one of those things is they're actually off by ones don't always trigger libasan. So I think that's one of the downsides of using sort of like libasan and some of those things to try to figure out if a bug is real, is that you may actually be missing bugs that are off by ones. And some of those bugs are very dangerous. So I think I could go over bug after bug after bug and say, oh, this is why this one's interesting and why it's hard for a human to find. But all the code that Aardvark is looking at is code humans have looked at already.
True.
It's not looking at code that isn't already reviewed, not just by a human, but also by whatever, CI/CD you have in the pipeline before it gets to Aardvark. So the fact that we find anything is kind of very interesting. It kind of answers that question.
Is there a specific class of vulnerabilities you're more optimistic that we'll get a handle on as we move forward, or a new class that we can kind of even like logic box, right?
Will the AI find a new class of bugs?
That's the question,
really
right?
Where we're going to get that's honestly, there's a lot of research still to do. No one says we finished the research here. I will say the AI loves cryptography, right? It was trained on math. So when it sees cryptographic bugs, that's stuff that I never would have even been able to test or see or understand in many ways. You remember that these things were trained to solve math puzzles, and they love them so much. So
interesting.
So some of that stuff that is doable by a trained researcher is actually easier with the AI, right? So look, there's 100 ways to do this, right? We're trying one path.
Okay, look, I'm an obvious fan. On a conceptual level, I'm also just a general OpenAI fan. But let me kind of pull back from that standness and kind of land it in a way that hopefully it's not uncomfortable for you, but I think needs to be asked. Make
it.
Well, look, right. I'm in a security company. OpenAI just did their first shot across the bow on security. You mentioned, right, like investors basically saying, oh, I'm glad we didn't go into this thing, seeing as you guys are going in there. There is this perception that when a frontier lab, it's kind of like Google coming into your space, right? Like when a frontier lab decides they're going to do something in your industry, you immediately kind of get this sense of like a giant has just walked into the bathtub, right? Like all the water starting to spill out, and there's some fallout, right? And displacement and whatnot. And I'm not saying that has to be the case, but part of, I guess what I'm wondering is, to what extent can we understand right now OpenAI's plans and ambitions and even like the role OpenAI envisions, or that you envision for OpenAI in the security space? Because there's one where we're all building on top of you guys and it's all happy-go-lucky and everybody's very excited to say, hey, OpenAI is an amazing, enabler for security teams. There's another one where you get this kind of like simplistic replacement narrative where it's like, oh no, OpenAI's here, don't worry guys, we've got security and we're all done. And I don't think either one necessarily works in and of itself, but it's important to know kind of where do you guys want to be?
Yeah, I don't. Let me just start by saying that I think OpenAI is extremely honest by pointing out that we want to be good partners, right? Like I'm not on this podcast. They didn't say, "Oh, you can go on this podcast," because we want to be separate and above, above everybody
Right.
else.
I'm
Replacing
surprised they
everybody's
let you come
business.
on this fucking podcast. Let's start there, right? Like again, right? I'm excited. I'm glad you're here.
We don't know
Right?
if they let him come back.
That's true. Let's make sure that happens.
Right.
But I would say that like I think you'll find that OpenAI is going to be a really good partner. I think that's we have maybe not done as great a job at communicating it, but we're definitely trying to reach out. If you look at the difference between 2 years ago and today, I think you'll see that we're actually very active reaching out, talking to people, helping fund AIXCC, like making sure people understand how to use our products the best, right? Like, so, even earlier today, Costin's like, AI sucks for this thing. And I'm like, I'm going to make that better for you, right? Like, this is important. And there's a lot of things we just can't and won't do, is the truth for our customers and for other people's customers. But that said, there's capabilities that we can provide that other people just can't provide or don't want to provide. And part of that is where we're going with Aardvark. I think people are afraid of the wrong thing, to be honest. I think what they should be afraid about is that AI is changing everything. And it's made a lot of their assumptions wrong already. And they need to learn how to adapt to that chaos before they worry about any of the people in the space, if that makes any sense.
Right.
It does, and I understand you can't answer these questions, obviously, but I mean, you obviously have commercial ambitions in cybersecurity. There's no way you're going to look at this multi-billion-dollar market that everybody's been bilking, and it's so terrible, and you don't have business ambitions. The question for you is, how did you answer your VC friend around, should I even be investing in any place that I think the frontier labs are going to go? Not necessarily OpenAI. And if you could talk to the startup entrepreneurs, guys thinking about starting new companies, you went to Offensive AI, Dreadnought, and those guys are doing interesting things. If you could talk to those guys, which areas should budding entrepreneurs focus, in your opinion?
It's interesting, like the VC world is a little bit like a herd dynamic sometimes, and they all want to flood into one thing, and each of them gets one portfolio company in that space and then tries to make that one the champion. And I think as an entrepreneur, though, your best bet is to try to do something that really only you can do and only you really understand why is important, right? So like if you think back to even SentinelOne and Immunity and all the companies we've been involved with, like Costin's new company, these are companies that would never exist if you hadn't done it, especially not in the way that they are now. And so when I talk to people who are doing things, I'm like, well, there's got to be something that you want to do that other people aren't doing, and it's not just make money. You know what I'm saying?
There's always that fear, though, that as soon as I try to do this, I don't have the resources of these big frontier labs that can go make all these kind of crazy.
Yeah, but you have other resources. Like that's the reality. You have other resources. Though that if it's something that a research lab should just do as part of their thing, then they might do it. They might not do it, but you're not going to train a model like a base model to be better than a research lab at that. Like you're not going to RL train a model to, I don't know, whatever the random thing is, right? So like that's not.
I think that is an important distinction, and I'll say that coming from the other side of that conversation, right? Like I'm at a company that has been doing sort of AI ML stuff for ages. You see OpenAI kind of coming into the space and a lot of other folks coming into the space. And you have to admit, if you have any sense of strategic wherewithal, the conversation has been had and is being had about like sort of what happens, right? But at the same time, Dave, to your point about like this is a small team and you're kind of focusing on specific things and you can't do everything. Like there is almost this overcompensation to the seeming chaos from folks like VCs, where you go, well, okay, you guys built Aardvark. There's a model. I'm going to be looking at like not having to train or, like you said, sort of try to prepare my own model that's going to somehow be able to handle bugs and these sorts of things. I can now leverage that. I don't see OpenAI building an endpoint product tomorrow, or, you know, suddenly trying to find. I mean, frankly, and we don't have to go into this, but like, it would be foolish to try to say with X amount of people, the thing that a frontier lab, which is like has a special capability to focus on creating frontier models. Instead, what they're going to do is go fight people to get on the endpoint, or go fight people to like get to control their CI/CD pipeline software, or like go fight people to build their sim, right? Like, there's a kind of bizarre throwing up our hands and saying everything's going to change, therefore we, you know, there's no place to invest in this space. And in reality, it's like there's a forcing function where we all need to adapt and update and come up with new shit on the basis of this technology. But I'm not seeing OpenAI or Anthropic or whomever really muscling into security in any, I'm not saying in not a meaningful way, right? Like, you're putting your stake in the ground here. You're putting a capability down that hasn't been there before. But I cannot imagine that you guys think that the best way to use your resources is to go fight it toe to toe on enterprise security with a bunch of random bullshit companies, right?
I think, you know, my personal mandate is to solve problems that probably nobody is addressing, right? Like, and do things in a very new way. And I think if you look at Aardvark, and if you actually looked under the covers, you would see that it does things in a completely different way from even the closest of the other people in that space. It has to have a unique vision to be real.
No one has ever seen an Apple SRD, security research device. When I hear about these private betas, I'll go into my own kind of curmudgeonly ways. Like, it becomes like vaporware that exists for you and a handful of friends. Like, what can we expect realistically from not only the availability of Aardvark, but people being able to talk about what they're using it for?
I would love to know that answer as well, right? Like, we announced yesterday, I'm really excited about even one more additional customer would be really cool, or, you know, trial member. I don't think that the goal of OpenAI is to like rush the product out the door either, right? So the goal is to get the product right. I think the management team is actually pretty exceptional in that regards. I think they know what they're doing, and that's fantastic, because lets me focus on solving research grade problems, right? So like, a lot of that stuff, I've run a company, I could think about that stuff. I don't want to think about that stuff, right? Like, I like that I can trust the team to make those decisions correctly, and then I can like solve another problem, right? Like, before we even started, I was like, Costin, what kind of thing would you like OpenAI to work on, right? Because then
tell the people what you were talking about.
I just think it's great, right? Like, I don't know every problem on insecurity either, right? So, you know, and I actually don't know the stuff y'all know on this podcast, right? Like, this, I listen to the podcast because I actually don't know any of this stuff. Like, if we talk about
either.
We don't either. Yeah, we're just kind of fucking around, right? Like, you know, I'm obsessed with like the reverse engineering applications of this, right? So like, for me with Aardvark, right, the thing I've been hoping for is like, am I going to be able to kind of sideways muscle my way into using this in some RE capacity? Because I see you having to build that harness under there in some way, right?
But I know that's not even hard. Is that a hard problem still?
In some ways, it feels like it's still a hard problem for me, but like, you know, tell us what you know, son. Does malware detonation
kind of solve that problem? I don't even know. This is why I'm asking legitimate questions.
No, not at all. Moreover, if there's something that I was discussing with folks at Offensive AI Con, is the better these computer use agents get, the better the ecosystem for sandboxing should be, in theory, malware sandboxing. Right? Like, one of the bigger problems that we've had in the past is how do you set up and maintain a cascade of snapshotted sandbox environments, right? Like, every time something gets updated, who the fuck goes in and like updates every bit of software in the thing, and then goes through every snapshot and make sure that's updated and puts it in the same state and sets the snapshots back up, right? Like, that was the complicated part of creating
and maybe that problem can just go away, right?
Yeah, I mean, it should. With if computer use agents get as good as they supposedly are getting, right? Like that's a problem that isn't a problem anymore. And that is one of those many problems in the realm that you were describing of like, yeah, there are things human beings can do, but it's not cost efficient to have a human being do them, and it's mind-numbing fucking work nobody wants to be doing. But look at the sandbox company space, right? What happens is someone builds a sandbox company and it's there for 3 years, and then someone buys it, and then somebody else builds another sandbox company and it's there for 2 years and somebody buys it. It just keeps happening over. It's like the forever, slot machine of getting acquired for like a modest valuation. But a part of it is just like, it's not an unsolved problem. It's just kind of like a trudging along on something unpleasant. But it is, to your point, right? I'm talking about reverse engineering and like static analysis and whatnot. Sandbox runs and malware detonation are our version of fuzzing. The same way that you're like, meh, fuzzing, like that's how I feel about dynamic analysis. I'm like,
So for you would prefer a purely static approach.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
somehow managed to tell you everything about a class of malware, compare it to other malware. And look, obviously you run we didn't even talk about your promotion, but right? Like this is the problem that like drives you, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't solve it tomorrow.
We have his promotion on the list to get to. Costin, we've been 1 hour and 5 minutes into this OpenAI shield session. Can you wrap it up with an overarching? What do we miss, Costin? What do we miss? Any last questions from you for Dave? Any thoughts on how quantum fits into this?
There was one more question. No, not quantum. There was one more question I wanted to ask, which is one of the problems that I personally face a lot, which is how much does the size of the context window matters when you look at code at scale. So just to give you an example, let's say that the code you're analyzing is 10 megabytes, but you can't look at everything at once. So you need to split it in parts. Does that actually break the understanding of the total purpose of code, or like when of the bug is nowhere specifically, but the bug is in the logic that 15 different functions interact with each other, and only when there's a certain combination of parameters, each one going through those functions, only then the bug appears. So is the context, the size of the context window, is it important, or it doesn't really matter anymore?
I mean, it's super important. Right, I think there was actually a really good recent paper someone released where they went over like a bunch of different AI bug finding things. They were like, actually, here's the 6 ways you can fix your context to make it sort of to analyze these problems. Look, all this is part of the engineering. Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong that this is like it's really hard to get right, and getting it wrong means false negatives and false positives. So, yeah.
I'm asking in the sense that would doubling the context window give you better results, or you're like, let's say, happy?
Maybe. Might be worse results. That's gotta
be worse. Interesting.
I think with a lot of these models, you got to think about like how effective they are at thinking over the bit size, as opposed to can they just shove it all in there. So if you were to shove it all in there but get half as good thinking, that would not be a good trade-off. So, and I think that's where algorithms still, and agentic frameworks, there's still a huge play there.
I really like what you said at the beginning, where you're trying to build something that for $500 gives you the $500 back, for 1,000 and like for 100,000 and so on. So that is just fascinating, because it also kind of suggests the more money you invest, the better results you'll get, the better hardware gets, the better everything will get. So just simply waiting for that to happen and watching the evolution of this, I think, will be fascinating. Just to wrap up everything the way Ryan wanted.
I wanted to piggyback on that, though.
For a while,
yeah,
right?
Me too.
I want to piggyback on that. Does that change what the poverty line looks like in security? I mean, how does this affect
I was jumping in with right where Ryan's going. I actually thought that was a really interesting statement of you to make, in the sense of like that somehow the economics of it stay the same, right? Like $500 for a $500 bug versus $500,000 for a $500,000 bug is not it's almost like an impending arbitrage opportunity, right? Like there's no way those numbers stay the same if we have now mechanized like slot machine oh, I just run Aardvark, I pay it 100,000. I'm going to pay it $1 million. I'll get $1 million, iOS exploit chain, and that's it, right? Like, there's no way those numbers stay the same.
And I think at this point, your guess is as good as mine, right? Like,
Come on.
Great at answering these questions. How well?
No, come on. Like, you're telling me. Look, let's game this scenario out. Aardvark version 4.0 is so legit that I know that if I walk in with, an iOS, a bunch of iOS libraries and whatnot code, I'm going to say, hey, we want to find an iOS exploit chain. An iOS exploit chain right now costs $2.5 million. And I'm going to invest, let's say, $1 million or $2 million into, hell, let's say it costs 2.5 and I can fit in $2 million worth of tokens into Aardvark, and I'm going to get that iOS exploit chain, right? Like, the disparity is still only, let's say, a $500,000 difference. Still great arbitrage opportunity, but if now Dave Aitel keeps showing up to Apple with iOS exploit chains every week because all it takes is running Aardvark for X amount of time, then the $2.5 million value of that bug in the market has to crater, just out of, like, you no longer have that scarcity. You have a greater supply, right? So, like, there is a way in which, like, the economics of this has got to change just by virtue of the existence of Aardvark. And maybe it's too spicy to talk about it in O-Day sale terms, but, like, let's talk about it in, like, amount of bones, right?
I think of it honestly the other way. I think it's going to be cheaper to write better code than it ever has before. I think that's just going to be the reality of it. The key word in your statement was chain. Like, you need to chain a lot of bugs together. There's going to be half as many bugs, maybe. Some of those bugs will still be pretty exquisite. They'll be really hard to find. They're going to be very expensive to think through, but some of them won't, and those will be gone. So I think overall, will code start improving? Yes. Obviously, improvements to your SDLC should improve your code and make bugs much harder to find and make the system much more reliable as well. The crashes will happen less. That's good too. So that's my feeling. But proof is going to be in the pudding. We have a lot of typing to do.
Speaking of vulnerabilities and exploits and millions of dollars and replica watches, we got news just last night that this L3 Harris executive has pleaded guilty to selling OData to Russian brokers. A couple of stories dropped last night. Reuters, Kim Zetter's reporting. Interesting find that the court documents doesn't identify the Russian company, but the prosecutor mentioned a social media post that was increasing payout for mobile exploits of $200,000 to $20 million, which matches this Operation Zero that we talked about on the old Katie Masouris podcast. Those guys were offering $4 million for Telegram exploit chains. Dave, you're I don't know if you want to jump in here, but I want to get your take on this is par for the course. Is this a big major embarrassment? Is this what spies do? Try to get exploits from other places? What was your initial reaction to this story?
Just astonishing disaster. It's like if you watched a train crash full of puppies or whatever. Like, absolute tragedy too, both for whoever was targeted by those exploits and for his family. And for all the people who worked on that, who put their time and energy into it. Kind of amazing story, like absolutely like mind blowing, like
why?
It's
not first time it's ever happened.
It's not the first time exploits have leaked. It's dramatic in a way that I think a lot of events like this are not necessarily dramatic, and maybe that's just because this one seems to have been played out a little bit in public. But we know a lot of people in this community, and the breach of trust. I think he's former ASD. They've probably got to go back and look at all of the things he's ever worked on.
This is going to be my next question: is what happens? What's the spillover effect of this and all the other stuff?
Huge. I mean, the blast radius is immense, and for like $1 million, like it's not like he wasn't making real money. You know what I'm saying? So it's sort of always anything like this is so astonishing. What a story. And I mean, you might have to repeat it for the viewers, but like, it looked like he like tried to frame one of his employee, and then the FBI was involved, and like, what a disaster. For me, it's sort of like, I think I'm too close to this community, and it's just sort of like, to me, it just feels like a visceral gut punch in a way, maybe.
Yeah, the Kim Zeta piece on zeta-0day.com. Highly recommend people go read that because there's a lot of nuance to what it is. But she's also reporting that he sold at least one of these tools to the Russian firm, which we believe to be Operation Zero, even after learning that a previous tool he had sold to that broker was being used by a South Korean broker. I don't know what that means really, but there's just a lack of control. Costin, what do you make of this?
Look, the story with the South Korean is strange in the sense of like, what is the problem in like that the South Koreans were using it? Does it mean that they bought it from Operation Zero, or does it simply mean that they got it from him as well? Did they get it from another employee at the same company? Like, to me, that doesn't seem like it's a big deal or kind of a showstopper for him. The fact that Koreans are using it, although it's interesting to know how did they know that the Koreans were using the same bug? Is it like something that Clement found at Google and wrote about? Is it one of those bugs? That would be also
Well, it's
interesting to know.
interesting that they said South Korean broker, right? They
Yeah,
didn't
that's
say
the word
a
that's
threat
weird.
actor, right?
Yeah.
Like it's sort of, but I think that's sort of the weird thing about all this stuff is right. What makes this space so complicated is sort of the shadowy trade. You don't know who has access to what, right? Like, and a lot of people end up circling back with each other and saying, "Hey, I've got access to a whatever bug, right? Like, do you want this thing?" And they're like, "Well, that sounds a lot like our bug, right?" Like, it's sort of it's a very strange sort of place. But what I'll say on this guy in particular, like, there clearly are some personality somethings involved here, because you're telling me you're still signing a contract for $500,000 while the FBI is investigating this. Like, you don't give a fuck. Like, this dude is just flying in the face of everything. So I don't know how much reasonableness came into this, right? Like, it sounds almost like Aldrich Ames, like, still sort of trying to like get money to buy fancy shit for his wife while like the FBI is just running around trying to like nail him.
It
And
feels
some of
like
the
this
fake
guy was also
Rolexes
part of the
were for his
investigation. Sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Some of the fake Rolexes were for his wife, so it is very much like in that vein. It just the whole thing looks horrible.
Yeah, he was involved in the investigation as well of a previous leak. In fact, in June 2025, he signed an agreement with a Russian buyer to sell stolen code for $500K, transmitted the code to the buyer just days before he met with the FBI to discuss their investigation into the theft of this Trenchant code. So it's just such a bizarro story. Anything else to add, guys?
Well, I'm afraid it sounds like Dave's gonna have to head out soon. Dave, do you want to like?
Yeah, you can
take
bounce
us
whenever
into
you want. I mean,
but like, is there something that you wanted to kind of nail down, or like that you want to discuss? Not necessarily about your work or whatever. That like we should kind of close out on while we have you here before the OpenAI people yank you forever and never let you come back on. Right?
that's
Like
famous last words.
famous last words.
Look, I just appreciate the opportunity to come on. I think this is a fantastic podcast. It's got a fantastic audience. You know, we look forward to continuing in this space and being good partners for people. And I think, like, I know that y'all are going to take me to task if that's not the case. So,
Dude, you're not going to hear the end of it if we don't get on that fucking beta. You know that.
I told you I don't choose. But the reality is like, I think long term, the whole community will hopefully be really happy with what we do.
More public documentation is required, though. Like, you guys shipped a browser. We don't know how it works. We don't know what's under the hood. We don't know. Like, there's like a lot of stuff that's missing.
They did a blog post.
Yeah, but
last
all your
night.
blog posts are marketing material. I read this. Like, it's come on.
Well,
No,
I
they
will
had
say
one on like
that.
the architecture of it. They were
I
like,
will
we
say
have
that
a sandbox
I want I would love, or can we look forward to like an Aardvark paper? Because like part of this, right? Like I want to talk about the commits, like the things that you're finding on like hey, this tells us, like, look, I'll be totally honest, and this is why I've been scared to
You
like
should
be
always
too,
be totally honest.
Well, I'm scared to be too like fanboyish, but like I was flying back from London yesterday and ended up like I was writing an op-ed about essentially what this tells us about what we should think about with research. And like, frankly, it's there's so much bullshit in the AI space around, AGI all the way to like the doomer nonsense to whatever. And there's very little discussion about what like experimental research is enabled by the increase in autonomy of having these models. And I think you guys pushing this out is like a landmark, interesting thing. But I'll take you to task only in the same way that I wanted to take Big Sleep to task, which is, guys, like, you're finding really cool shit. We need it. We need some spelling out of the cool shit. Like, I know you guys don't want to give up your trade secrets as to like how you're orchestrating this amazing new tool, but like even just the findings of saying, hey, these are the amount of commits we checked and this amount of places we found, and these are the types of bugs that we found, and therefore 1.2% means blah, blah, blah. Like, that is a really fascinating finding about open source, about code maintenance, about the dynamics of code development over time. And that's something that I'm genuinely, like, I'm almost begging for a point to reference based on the stuff that you guys are working on.
Look, I think I'm not going to be the only one doing this research. We're going to be giving people access to the product as soon as we legitimately can. You're gonna be able to make your own decisions on whether or not we met Ryan's benchmark of software getting better in a real way. I obviously believe that we can meet that mark, but like, time's gonna tell, right? Like, and the job is not done just because we managed to get it to beta. The job is done, every day we are pushing code, listening to customers, making sure it actually functions in the way that customers expect. So and I think the Big Sleep team they've published a little bit more than us, but like not a huge amount either. I think the main difference is that you can see what bugs they've found. But that's going to, honestly, pretty soon it's just going to be, here's all the bugs that don't exist in code bases, and it's just going to be part of the game. So
do you have to
anyway,
drop right
I really
now?
appreciate it. What's that?
Do you have to drop right now?
Yeah, I got to drop. I'm sorry.
All right.
I got to go type some things.
I'm glad you're
thanks
here,
so much
man.
for having me. We'll
Thanks
be around.
for all this.
Thanks, man.
We're
Appreciate
still part
you,
of the
bro.
community.
We'll
Come
talk.
back.
Thanks a lot, Dave.
Ciao, ciao.
This week, guys, Kaspersky had SAS I believe it was in Thailand. Was it Thailand? And we got news. We got a big research report on the return of HackingTeam, forum troll HackingTeam linked to this Dante spyware. And more interestingly, we have TechCrunch confirming from the new HackingTeam Momento Lab CEO confirming that the code is his, and the spyware caught by Kaspersky does indeed belong to this new Memento group. Costin, have you been following any of this at all?
Remember that we discussed about Operation Forum Troll some time ago when Kaspersky actually promised they would be sharing more details, and then they didn't share the details, and we were wondering, well, why is it so? Now we know
they were holding it for
they
SAS,
were holding
right?
it for SAS, right? It was like not some
Same
kind of
thing
a
we would have
drama.
done. So no.
Sure, like absolutely, like same as any other company would do with a big discovery, because I think this is a pretty big discovery. Of course, people thought HackingTeam is dead and gone, and in reality, it looks like they're very well alive, doing well. And it's quite interesting that typically these kind of tools don't cyber mercenary tools. I mean, they're not very often used to target nation states directly. So this targeting of Russia with cyber mercenary tools, in particular with this, is not, let's say, very often seen. Now, previous reports, they talked about like the different stages. I think Positive Technologies had a blog post as well. Dr. Webb also found it, and they called it Dante.
Does that suggest that it's active, very, very active all over Russia?
I would say that someone
Russia,
using these tools is determined to make the most out of it against Russia. I would say there's a nation state who is essentially using it as much as possible, like trying to get every bang out for the buck. with these Memento Labs tools.
Can Conspiracy Ryan put on a hat for a second?
Tell us who.
No.
Put on your
I'm
hat,
just going to
son.
put a hat on for a second.
Okay.
Let's assume, just for conspiracy's sake, none of this is true, but this is Ukraine, right? And Ukrainians are using this, and there is evidence that and the Memento guy says, yeah, it's our thing. We sell it to people, and we didn't know they were using this old Windows thing. They should have stopped using it. Does that make Memento an enemy combatant in the eyes of the Russians? Is there a mucking up of the water here when you start to see? And I'm just, again, conspiracy. I don't even know it's the Ukrainians. When you mention that, I'm just curious about your thoughts here. Bringing our boy Mauro's talk into consideration around who's an enemy combatant, when does civilians become enemy combatant, when does an exploit shop become an enemy combatant when this thing is being used there?
Well, I think the situation was reversed. Let's say, just imagine the opposite and targeting of United States. United States would totally sanction the hell out of Memento Labs. I mean, they've done this in the past with NSO, right? So, like, judging from the other side, I would say that Russia is probably concerned about this. I don't know if they can actually do anything against Memento Labs or if they actually want to do anything about it. The capabilities would be limited. But if you ask me, yeah, sure, it falls into a certain sensitive category. Probably they don't worry too much, but yeah, like going back to what Mauro was saying in the past, this can actually fall into that category.
I'm surprised this doesn't worry them more. Like, I'll say this: Lorenzo pinged me and sort of sent me the article when it came out, and because obviously HackingTeam is a shared love of ours. I was a bit blown away that the CEO quite so readily, quite so easily just goes, "Yep, that's our stuff. We had told people not to use the Windows thing. We're only doing mobile now." And you're like, thank you for the transparency. I think we have known HackingTeam to be at the forefront of radical transparency, whether it would like to be or not. At the same time, it felt almost amateur-esque in its approach. Like, it's a kind of being candid that I have always wanted for the sake of understanding, but that I understood why we didn't get it, because it was a kind of naivete that people well steeped in the intelligence game would not succumb to. And now that it's happened, right, we get to have a very upfront conversation about, like, guys, fuck enemy combatant. It's the Russians. The Russians have been fucking poisoning and murdering people all over Western Europe, over like sabotaging shit over the past however many years, especially in the context of this war. And you're telling me that they know that you're a supplier of equipment that is being used to spy in Russia so prolifically that, like, it's being reported by 3 different vendors, and you're like, yep, we built that. Like, you're telling me that they wouldn't at least try to disrupt, interfere, spy, pursue, disable, delete, right? Like, it seems naive in a way. Like, I don't even know. Like, first of all, we don't know who the fuck Forum Troll is, right? Like, you could say maybe it's the Ukrainians, but also, like, there's a lot of other people in Europe who can buy nation state tools who are interested in what's happening in Russia. Could be the Poles, could be the Finns, could be the Swedes, could be whomever, right? Like, so this is it. I wouldn't oversimplify it. If anything, what we do know, it is a nation state. It is a nation state that trades with Italian companies. Beyond that, right? Like, the primary target at this point is the company that's literally incorporated in Milan, and you know where to find, and they have a building and they have whatever, and you're like, okay, I don't think you understand the game that you've gotten involved in. You bought the company for €1. You might want to take a little time to understand the situation you've just, like, shoved yourself in the middle of.
I think it's really fascinating to see people come out and do this kind of exposure that you... I agree with you. I agree with you.
It's nuts. This is nuts.
The transparency is just out of control here. And I think there's going to be downstream
Phineas
implications.
Yeah. Phineas Fisher bought the company.
Phineas Fisher, yeah.
Costin,
But
did we get... Did you get IOX? How do you read the original? This report we had criticized in the past because it was half written. Now we realize why it was half written. What's the quality of the report here?
Um, I think it could be better, but of course, I'm never happy. So maybe it's just me. I thought it was, by the way, an interesting point in this article, which attracted my attention, which is that, like this guy, let's see, he said the company warned customers that Kaspersky had detected Dante since December 2024. And I was trying to understand what does that mean, because is this like related to Kaspersky's publishing of something in December of 2024, or is it something more interesting, such as them monitoring Kaspersky detections and suddenly seeing, hey, Kaspersky started detecting this thingy. Maybe it's a silent detection or like a live detection, whatever. And please stop using it. So this also provides a kind of fascinating view into the world of these guys who monitor security solutions to see if their stuff has been caught. And I know that security solutions are also fighting very hard to do the opposite, as in, we're not going to deploy silence for this threat because we know they monitor our silence, so we don't do that. We do it like in a different manner, and we're not going to push live detections until the last moment. And we're going to switch to backend monitoring, Yara rules, generic hunting names, and so on. So like this whole, hide and seek game between spyware developers, security companies, fascinating to me. And everybody knows that the other guys know that they know, and just getting around that is fascinating.
Juanito, is there an all advertising is good advertising angle here? I mean, the guy comes out and says, hey, look, this is what I have to sell. We're amazing.
I don't think so. Not like, first of all, HackingTeam was essentially cratered from one of the de facto standard Western bits of tooling for a certain class of nation states to like a shell of a company. And it's amazing that it still exists. It's amazing that Momento Labs is still a thing, and that it has customers of some sort. So, but I don't think that it proves that it was a winning strategy, or that like you somehow like that this was sort of a ultimately like good for them kind of thing. It, to me, it just seems like it's just not very well thought out. Not and frankly, it says things about the technology that make me uncomfortable. Like HackingTeam, first of all, the HackingTeam leak let us understand a lot about how these companies work. And one of the things that we saw was, yeah, they do monitor for detections. Moreover, they even had like a VT subscription under a shell company so that they could pay attention to detections and like be on the lookout for their own stuff. I don't know if they're still doing that. I'm pretty sure VT canceled that account. Maybe they found a different way to do it. Maybe they're running their own version of, CAV somewhere that they're monitoring themselves. Interesting question in and of itself. But then you look at the details of what this guy is saying, and he's like, oh, yeah, we're not sure who's using the Windows thing. We had told people to stop using the Windows thing, and we emailed everybody to stop using it. And you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, how do people continue to use your malware development suite to make malware without you, like, enabling it, right? Like the whole point of the mechanism that HackingTeam had so expertly created was you had this master node architecture and licenses, and people were paying you to have active licenses per operating system target and stuff. So like, how the fuck are people using the thing if you you disabled the thing, right? Like it scares me that we've somehow rolled way back into these guys are just developing malware and other people are getting to like point click deploy, and they can't even keep track of who's doing what. Like it's weird. It's a little, the whole thing is kind of concerning.
Did we all believe that these guys went away completely? Was this a big shock and surprise to you that it's all connected now and they kind of reappeared and they seem to be just like business as usual?
I'm surprised that they were still commercially viable, right? Like, and in the sense that Hacking Team was a mega business. It had a shit ton of VC funding, which I personally think, like my personal thesis about Hacking Team is that VC funding destroyed that company. That it forced it to become something that I don't know that it wanted to be, right? And I leave that to Lorenzo to kind of properly substantiate it, and he can say what he finds from the people involved. But my thesis was that a lot of people signed up to do something cool and something that they considered to be a good thing to do, and for a while it was something cool and something that was doing good, right? Like you were helping track mafia in Italy, you were helping law enforcement do things that law enforcement couldn't do. Why do I say that the VCs were the ones? Like, I know I cast a lot of stones towards the VCs, but the reason I focus on the VCs is you suddenly pump 100 million euro worth of investment, or 150 million euro, 200 million euro, whatever. And now you're not just a shop that's building cool little things for law enforcement. You're also a shop that's building cool little things for law enforcement and has to produce a multiple X return. When you say that you only sell to governments and nation state whatevers, you go, okay, well, there are only so many companies and there are only so many governments that you can legitimately sell this to. You now have to make even bigger returns. Of course, the bar, like there's a whole lot of pressure for the bar of who you sell to very quickly start, kind of getting pushed down. And not to spoil anything of what Lorenzo's working on, but I'll at least say I don't know how much of a surprise this will be to people, but when the first reports about Hacking Team came out, there were a lot of developers and people who worked at Hacking Team who were surprised about where their stuff had ended up and how their stuff was being used, and they left. There's a lot of people who left in the I want to say 2013 or 2012 era, like when the first KL reports come out, and like there was some evidence of like, oh, you're in kind of some shady places doing some shady shit. A lot of people left. And then you have a company that's kind of more bare bones and more like ethically IDGAF that is serving a much wider set of folks. But I do think that incentive comes from that money side. And to tie it full circle with the Trenchant story, right? There's a reason why we're looking at Trenchant, now through Harris, slash Azimuth, slash whatever the hell you want to call it, in this particular setting with this Peter Williams story, and going, damn, like that's a tragedy. Like that is an unusual and awful thing. Not because these things don't happen, but because we're used to looking at this Western contractor, particularly sort of with Azimuth and the way that it got that it played out under John and Mark, and they did it the right way, where you go, you stuck to your Five Eyes, and you never really went and empowered somebody to do something that was like completely out of the bounds of having a legal remit. You never, in all those years with your name out there, Ryan, you're muted.
They never lost control in any known way, right?
Yeah. Like, I mean, and they weren't like, we just didn't see the money grab. We didn't see them go, oh yeah, we're going to compromise ourselves just a tiny bit, but look at, we're going to buy a bunch of Rolexes, right? Like it just, they did it right, and they kept it small, and they enriched, they created a lot of value for themselves. And I think we're all happy for them. And then seeing that happen now, you're like, damn, like that's shitty. But it's not like it's something that we expected of that company, because the way that it's set up tells you that it's going to be shitty, right? Like that's unusual there. In these cases, you look at it and you go, the deck is stacked towards abuse. And when it happens, you're not super surprised, but it's also why people look at folks that kept working at Hacking Team towards the end, and you go, I don't know that I trust you. I don't know how, innocent you were in all this, right? Like you had enough indications at that point that some shit was going down.
From my side, shout out to Boris Larin. We got a Chrome OD out of this. A sophisticated zero-day exploit that was used to escape the Google Chrome sandbox. And these guys reported it to Google and got a quick fix, CVE 2025-2783, correct. So shout out to Gosha and Boris Lorraine on our old team there. Costin, anything from this that gives you an impetus to go hunting for something new? Anything here?
I know there's a lot of people hunting for related stuff, and I think there's a few other angles of this story that haven't been described yet. So I
What
think
are they?
it can give more.
You can't say that.
It's a story that keeps on giving. I think there's more fun stuff hopefully coming out.
So this is something you know, and you're just
I
kind
know.
of like playing coy. I gotcha.
I know, but don't want
You're
to
just being
ruin
transparent to the
anyone's.
audience.
No,
I
no,
don't
it's
want to
fine.
ruin anyone's research. I mean,
Fair
I
enough.
just let people analyze it at their own pace and publish it whenever their conferences come. And
Gotcha. I gotcha, brother. Quickly, let's touch
this story has more. There's
more
more to
legs.
give.
I mean,
There's
look,
more.
even,
Yeah.
even from the CEO himself, right? He says, "Oh no, we're just a mobile company only," and like Lorenzo's like, "Oh yeah, they it puts out like, oh, we've got like O-Days. We're developing some O-Days in house. We're like, where's Apple on Momento Labs? You guys pushing any notifications there? Like, what the
Just
fuck's
wanna
going on?"
say
There?
that kind of statement is a big reckless in the sense that it's like just we do mobile stuff and nobody's caught us yet, and you can
Yeah.
be sure that all those guys are now like hunting with code similarity, infrastructure based hunting certificates and whatever for the mobile implants, and most likely they have them already, taking
The
them
flag
apart.
has been planted.
Yeah, so yeah, do not tease security companies like that. It's a bad thing to do.
Let them
Let's
do it.
pivot quickly because I know Juanito, you got a hard stop as well.
Yeah.
How far away are we?
45 minutes. We got a little time.
Let's do another 20 minutes because I got two small stories, at least two small stories I want to touch on. One is this new reporting out of Russia about a disclosure law proposal, new regulations that transfers oversight of white hat hackers, let's call them security researchers, to state agencies that include the FSB, FS Tech, and NCCCI. I suppose those are like internal Russian agencies. The bill defines, and this is a proposed bill, vulnerability research broadly covering bug bounty programs, corporate security testing, independent research, but it seems to be a copycat of what happened in China, the Chinese law where the vulnerability had to be disclosed only to the affected vendor and to a government agency, and they had a kind of a head start of it. According to the Russian proposal, any discovered flaws must be reported not only to the vendor but also to these Russian security services. Do we expect that this will play out and happen? Is this just like a natural evolution of this busted, balkanized ecosystem that we're heading into? You think this law has a chance of passing? What do you guys make of this?
I would say that, like, first of all, we need to understand also the implications to people who are not doing bug bounty or, I don't know, security research. If Kaspersky, we just talked about Kaspersky, if Kaspersky finds a Chrome 0-day, right? Under this law, they would have to disclose it to state security agencies in advance.
And Google.
To Google, you mean, or Google would have to disclose it to state security agencies?
As I understand it, they have to report it to the software owner, which would be Google in this case, and
fine.
the security service, the security agencies. They get a heads up,
we,
right?
We know they would be reporting to Google anyways, because I mean they've been doing it for forever. But reporting to the 0-day, to the FSB, STEC, whatever, that can be a sensitive issue if you ask me, because what stops them from just repurposing it, weaponizing that exploit and using for their own purposes, and that's gonna happen. I mean, it's too good to
even
skip.
And we
even
believe
the
the Chinese have
Chinese-
already done that, right? With the orange side thing, they were like, there's like enough connections to suggest
Well,
that the Chinese.
it wasn't the orange. I don't know if it was the orange. It wasn't the orange side thing. It was the Pangu Cup. What was it? Whichever one. God damn it.
Tianfu Cup.
Tianfu Cup.
Tianfu
And
Cup.
there was a great article from Patrick Howard O'Neill in the MIT Tech
The Atlantic,
Review,
yes.
where it was like that the bug that had been put in the Tianfu Cup was the bug that was ultimately used in some of those Uyghur attacks. Though there, I mean, you have it in sort of like a CTF context, right? Like, was it just bought there? But look, let's talk about this, right? What is the point what is the legitimate reason why you need to inform your government first? Because it's not, hey, we need to make sure that we have an opportunity to patch Chinese and Russian systems on time, right? It's no, we need to know about the bug before you tell the ecosystem maintainer about the bug. And it's kind of hard to spin that as anything other than we should be the ones deciding whether this ODA goes to the people that will patch it, or whether we should be taking advantage of it, weaponizing it, using it in the meantime, or whether we use it for a while and then, like, it's basically asking for free ODAs, and then we'll decide which ones go to get patched. And it's kind of fucking nuts. Like, it's crazy that you can be so overt as a government, because I don't see
Is it though?
Well,
Because our own
it doesn't.
government, I mean, let's do the Mr. America thing for a second. Our own government
Yeah.
has been discussing this quietly in the background. Katie Masouris warned us about this when they were doing what was the name of that CISA advisory thing that the CSRB.
Yeah.
After a CSRB investigation into, I believe it was the online breaches, Katie Masouris wrote an op-ed and saying, hey guys, be careful about asking to copycat this Chinese thing because it makes the ecosystem less secure, blah, 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 all the things that we're warning about. So it seems like, I mean, not that it seems like, it was quite obvious that there were discussions in the US angles about like, hey, if the Chinese are doing this and now the Russians are doing this, we have no choice, right?
Yeah, but in the US, what you get is this attempt to make law that makes things worse because the people making the laws don't understand the nuances, and you end up getting these oversimplistic laws like the CFAA, like basically the CFAA making it so that I'm hacking if I, as a researcher, find some password, some credentials that are hard coded into malware that are clearly being used for abuse, and I log into that account. I am a hacker and I've broken the law, right? Like, that obviously is an insane level of overreach, but it's also a law that was written in the fucking 90s, right? Like, I think what Katie is rightly pointing out is almost that, like, the hacker community has this fear, like, the situation is bad legally right now. It's inefficient, inadequate. However, we don't look at it as, oh, if only somebody would make new laws, because our fear is that if somebody goes to make new laws, they're going to make the situation even worse. And that's not an unsubstantiated fear coming from folks like Katie Masouris, who were involved in Wassenaar and trying to keep that from being like a nuclear adjacent regulatory regime style disaster that never made any fucking sense, right? However, the reason it's not defending America in particular, it's just that is about not having an overreaction. This, with the Chinese and the Russians, is that, like, I don't even see the veneer of propaganda that says, oh, the good faith reason we need you to do this is to defend Russian systems first. Like, there isn't even, like, they're not even pretending that there's a good reason why. It's just, don't fucking tell the Americans or like these foreign companies how to fix their software before we decide what we want to do with it. And that's fucking nuts. Even, and look, the dynamic just doesn't work the same way in the US, right? Like, it just doesn't, because most of those companies are here anyways. So this notion
It's
that,
been
like,
the status quo in China for what, 2 years now, though? Like,
and
all
it
bugs have to be
drastic-
reported into these Chinese ecosystems first.
and it drastically changed the participation of Chinese vulnerability developers in Pwn2Own and like a bunch of other conferences, and like it's not like it's been without consequence.
Isn't that the intent?
I guess. I mean, I can't speak for the Chinese, but like there definitely was an idea of like this should be benefiting us first. I think the concern with something like bugs, where the thing is, it's not just benefiting them first, but rather like there are multiple types of benefit, and one of them is purely offensive and the other one is collectively defensive, and we may never get collective defense at all, right? It doesn't necessarily meet that bar, right? It doesn't mean that because the government got it and then we got a patch. It can just mean the government got it and then they weaponized it, they used it, and then nobody found out about it until we discovered it in some like fucking Fortinet appliance. Cool. All right.
Costin, how does this play out over the next 1 year, 2 years? Every major country with security vulnerability researchers being active has this in place. It just feels inevitable to me. The Russians are going to do this. It's good. The Chinese, it's working for the Chinese. The Russians are going to do it. And then the Americans are going to be like, there's going to be half of the country here saying, what the fuck? Why aren't we doing this shit too?
I mean, look, to me, I think there's another angle here that we might be missing, which is there's all these companies popping around like mushrooms after the rain, buying and selling 0 days all over the world. I mean, it's not just like this Operation 0 Day in Russia, but it's basically everywhere. There's like dozens of companies doing the same. And the governments probably in those countries are like, what the fuck is going on, guys? Like, you're buying one thing, that you're selling it to Ukraine, the next day you're selling it to the United States, then they use it on us. Like, all this shit needs to stop. We need to put some order in our backyard. And from now on, this is how things are gonna work. You need to stop all this shit of buying and selling randomly. You're gonna okay, you can sell, so you can buy and sell your stuff, but we are gonna have unrestricted, free of charge access to it because we're the government, and these are like weapon level capabilities, and you're gonna give us all this for free, and you can still sell it, but only to those that we say it's okay. So you can sell it to this country or this company or this government and so on, but obviously not to our enemies and not the way you think, and definitely not under the radar, but like in a more transparent way where you are like registered, you have an official accreditation, identification, and so on. So I think that probably is a more likely scenario of what's happening here, and I think that China is also worried about the same thing. Although, remember from our previous discussions that this particular company, which is the one also involved with the L3 Harris case, this is a company that has like very powerful background, like with powerful background being the way of saying that they are well connected, and obviously they are in the loop. So they are not one of those rogue companies.
This is the Operation Zero
stuff.
people.
Correct. Yes, Operation Zero. So yeah, they're well connected, and I think this is just trying to put a bit of order, like in their own backyard, like all these.
You don't see a
crazies.
you don't see a nefarious angle here. You see an attempt to professionalize, get a grip on this chaos of like this mess.
How you define nefarious, in the sense that they want free experts, like. We're the government. We're not supposed to be paying for these things. You're like a Russian company doing like trading in this. Like we're okay to pay, but we're gonna pay like the Russian prices, like in rubles. Or just to give you an example, like in Cuba back in the days, they had two currencies. Probably Jags also remembers it. They had like a currency for foreigners, the cook, and they had like a currency for the locals, and the exchange rate was something like 1 to 10 or 1 to 50, and the prices would be like the same for locals and the foreigners. So you pay $50, but the locals, they pay 50 local pesos, which is like you cut 2 zeros or something like that. So just probably also very how to say economic. And
do the Americans follow and do it?
Like sometimes I wonder, because the most interesting aspect which connects to this, in my opinion, would be the national Bitcoin reserve, or however it's called, which Trump said he doesn't want to pay for it. So we're going to establish this without paying for it. How? Well, donations, coins that the FBI confiscates from criminals or from people who are paying on criminal sites. So you're building this national cryptocurrency reserve without having to pay for it. So building your national 0-day reserve without having to pay for it would be an analogy. Why not?
Feels natural.
Why not? To me, I don't know if to me to me, I think everybody needs to make a living, but having to pay $20 million for the iOS zero-click chain with persistence is, like, I mean, a bit too much. Kind of crazy.
One closing thoughts on that? Is it inevitable that there's some variation of this in America?
No.
You doubt?
I don't think that there is any corollary for this that can play out in the United States. There's no version, like it's too compulsory. Oh, you can't tell them? It's like, I can't tell them. Fuck you. Like, it's code. Well, I'll tweet it. What are you going to do about it?
Culturally,
Right? Like,
you don't see this working
no,
here.
it just there's no obvious corollary. A lot would have to change around here. I'm not saying it can't. I'm just saying a lot would have to change before that's the way that works over here. At the same time, this doesn't feel super unfamiliar for Soviet times, right? Like when you talk about like the inventor of Tetris not having ownership over the source code or any of the gains and how that got sold, and that was sold by the state, and like that all sounds pretty normal in the Soviet fucking Union. Like it's just sort of like it's a weird thing to just kind of see that level of regression and to just kind of go, oh yeah, okay. You go. It also, to the point earlier about do we see HackingTeam as part of the war efforts and it's as a legitimate target for the Russians? Well, it also paints every researcher in the country as somehow complicit in the national apparatus for cyber operations. Not willingly, not because they want it to be, but because they're legally required to be. So it continues to blur that line. Yeah. But I mean, the government has done that on your behalf at this point. The same way that we were talking about like the cyber militia conversation in China, you go, yeah, I get that it's like a patriotic endeavor and whatever the fuck, but like you're basically telling me that there are embedded people being trained who will be tapped to take part in offensive government operations when the time comes, who on their day jobs work at our equivalent of Google and right telcos and whatnot. Like it definitely says some shit that's just very uncomfortable when you want to have any kind of global customer base for anything.
All right, gents, we're right to the 2:00 mark. Let's close the show with some shout outs. Dave Aitel, I'll start. Dave Aitel actually mentioned it at the top, and I want to spend some time on this for a second and congratulate Juanito on his big promotion at Sentinel-1. What is the new title? What is the new role? What are you hoping to accomplish out of this? From the two of us, on behalf of the Three Body Problem, I think it's a big deal. I think Sentinel-1 is smart to put you in a place where your skills and your expertise will shine. Tell the audience what you're going to be doing.
Well, thank you. So now just senior technical fellow, which is sort of a weird thing, right? Like it's weird, I think, for the rest of us to understand what fellows are supposed to be in like big companies. I've had a bunch of people be like, what the fuck's a fellow? I'm like, yeah, I get it.
It's not when they kick you upstairs to do like, just be quiet, stay away from meetings and be like, quiet.
Stay away from here and just don't leave, but don't fuck anything up. No, I think it's actually a really appealing thing. I'm beyond happy to get here because the way I think of it is essentially like, here's the Apex IC title, like individual contributor title, that says you have license to go focus on what you think is important without, getting bogged down as much by the day-to-day stuff, by the meetings, by the people management and whatnot. And I think it is very smart on the part of Sentinel-1 to create that space. And I think a lot of other companies would do well to follow suit. And frankly, we didn't make this up, right? Like that's what Google and IBM and other places have done for ages is, when you have folks that you respect on a technical level, you don't want them to have to become people managers, but you also don't want them to leave, right? So you want to give folks to have the opportunity to follow their passion and follow what they think is important. In our case, this goes hand in hand with us moving labs under the AI and Innovation Org, and rather than something bullshitty about it. Like the reason I am so like I was excited for this talk with Dave this morning, and you see me so like indexed on these discussions we've had lately with the LabsCon keynote, with the binding hook talk, with all these things, is I think that there's a very legitimate and important remit that security researchers need to take on, with the application of all of this new technology. And it's to say that we need to be the ones who determine how it works, why it works well, where it's actually efficient, whether the claims of Anthropic and OpenAI and Google DeepMind and whomever actually check out, whether they're true. And that takes a sort of like experimental research approach, like what we talk about, like applied AI security research. And that's going to be a new sort of bigger remit for Sentinel Labs, that, you know, I hope it's going to prove quite interesting. But it also, I get to have my moment of like, I'm back, right? Like I can let go of a lot of the executive stuff. I have infinite faith in Steve Stone, who I've learned an immense amount from, to take this organization that we've built, threat operations, and lead it, to do really cool shit for customers, and to really step up what it means to get services and all that stuff, and threat intel within S1, and to take the cutting edge researchers we have and focus them back on the cutting edge, which is the economic technological paradigm has just drastically shifted, and we have no fucking clue what that means for security. So let's go figure out what it means, right? So that's our goal from this point forward.
Costin, what are you hoping we get out of this man in this big fancy senior technical fellow role?
More parties, of course. More LabsCon, at least one in the future where I can also attend and hang out with you guys, go
Please,
through all
man.
the talks, and yeah, why not even present if possible. So yeah, just good luck with that, Juanito.
Thank you.
And I hope that gives you more time that we can spend with LLMs on revisiting very cool dinosaur bones and
We have some ideas already.
paleontology stories. We have
Oh,
ideas.
I know.
Absolutely.
You guys
ideas.
just met up, and every time you get to sit in a coffee shop, I know there's going to be good things to come out of it. Which reminds me that the three-body problem next week, where the three of us are going to be in the same room for the first time doing this podcast at the Countermeasures Conference in Ottawa next week, next Friday afternoon. I don't believe we'll be live on the internet. I think it's just recorded for the audience there. I'm very, very much looking forward to that. Costin, your training is all sold out yet?
Yeah, training is scheduled for Wednesday and Thursday next week. So we're working very hard to bring new cases, new materials, new interesting stuff in the last moment. So yeah, that should be very interesting for those attending. And if not, I'm sure that there'll be other opportunities in the future. Why not? Countermeasure actually is coming back after a long break. And kudos to Karim and Saumil for reviving Countermeasure. I think it's a wonderful event. And I hope that
We have
they
fans in
also
Canada,
organize
right?
next year. We allegedly have fans in Canada.
Allegedly.
You know my opinion. Like Canada is the best when it comes to all those slides in the Snowden leaks. Canada is the best. Like there's no question about it.
Speaking of conferences, a quick shout out to Echo Party, our friends Fedi and the folks in Argentina. They're going to have Echo Party Miami this year in May 21 and 22. So that's happening there. Shout out to Fedi. Hope all the planning goes fine. Miami is always a vibe. I might even be there. So
We
looking out
have
for
to
that.
go. I'm actually genuinely excited. Like the
100%.
Argentinians put
There's
on
it's different. They're different.
the Argentinians put on an amazing party. Like there's few conferences that I tell people they have to experience, but Echo Party is one of them. And it's not the conference itself. It's the vibe. It's what surrounds it. It's the food. Like you go to this place and you just like everyone treats you like they welcome you for having come to the country, and they make it their business to like. I had
Make
somebody
sure you had the best time. Yeah.
Dude, somebody who's done unbelievable research. I didn't find this out until much later on. Like insane research, the kind of stuff that like, you know, Thomas Ritt discussed in his keynote at LabsCon. I didn't know that was that person. They were just tour guiding for me and like our friends the entire time. And you're like, I feel like it's insane that you're spending that time, but they're just such good ambassadors of sort of like their own country and their culture. And Miami lends itself to very naturally have that because you've got a whole portion of it that is just Argentinians, right? So it's like I think this is actually a really cool thing to bring.
And on the important side, these guys put together quality content for their conferences as well. I know Nico Wiseman is on their program committee. They put a lot of. It's not just the vibe and the partying and the meat and the food and going down to Argentina. It's really, really high quality conference. Hopefully, that quality makes it to Miami.
And what I heard is there's like this legend that there's a steakhouse in Buenos Aires where they serve a 4-kilogram steak. And if you can actually eat the whole steak, you don't have to pay for it. But like nobody's been able to eat it so far.
Challenge accepted. I don't know about that.
Always.
Juanito, closing shout out from your side?
Well, I obviously have to shout out Max Meets and the folks at Binding Hook. I really appreciated sort of the opportunity to give a more refined version of the talk. And frankly, one I would not have been able to kind of conceptualize properly without Max's help ahead of time. So I'm genuinely grateful.
I'm glad you addressed the Dan Gear thing in there as well, because you didn't bring it up at LabsCon, and it was a big kind of gap with this push for standardization leads to monoculture. Like where do we find this balance, right?
Yeah, and look, I'll share the true insight of what Max kind of helped me with, which is I feel like I've got this really complex forest of concepts that I think are really fascinating and useful for all of these applications of AI and stuff. And I've been so lost in that forest that I've just been trying to tell people about everything that I'm seeing in this sort of fascinated way. And it's actually keeping the point from landing properly. So what all Max did was basically tell me to stop and like pick one thing and focus on that one thing. And that was, okay, let's talk about software entropy and standardization and the need to like kind of limit complexity. And that the adversaries that we've been talking about are not the actual adversary, that the adversary is complexity. And that's where you get, that Dan Gear anecdote about like monoculture is such a perfect way to kind of position this whole thing, because I don't think that Dan's point about, the dangers of monoculture and my point about the need for standardization are actually conflicting. It sounds like they should be, but I don't think they are, because in a way, standardization is not just the important for the means of like diffusion to the majority of security measures actually making it out to everybody, but also it's what keeps us from being locked in monoculture. The lack of standardization when it comes to our interfaces is the reason that we're locked into cloud providers and not being able to migrate from Azure to GCP and GCP to AWS. It's the reason that you end up locked into one provider of, this or that solution as opposed to the other ones. And to the point of the folks in the chat, that's what got Dan fired. And if you listen to the talk, it was me saying, this is my attempt to get myself fired too. But because it is something that is so uncomfortable and undesirable to hear for vendors, but it is so crucial, not just as a nice to have, not just as like a neat little flavoring for customers, but because it's the only fucking way to actually allow customers to have control over what they're doing, and to be empowered to move from one vendor to another, from one culture to another, from one ecosystem to another, while at the same time continuing to gain the benefits of the work that Dave is doing with Aardvark and that others are, the Kaspersky guys are doing by reporting Chrome O-Days, which is what we see is not happening in, let's say, the Android ecosystem, where if you bought a Google Pixel phone, you're getting all the updates mainline, but if you bought some HTC or Samsung or whatever the fuck you, good luck. We'll see when the patch gets to your branch of a branch of a branch of the Android repo. And like, it's just, it's kind of nuts that like we're doing all this work and it doesn't raise the tide for everybody. So that's not a shout out. That's more to say, like,
I was just going to say you restarted the
baited
podcast.
me. You baited me. You fucking baited me on the talk, right? Anyway, so like, I do think I need to put that out somewhere.
Shout out to Max.
Shout out to Max. Shout out to Binding Hook and everybody there. Cosmos Institute people, the folks that got to talk on some very interesting things, and yeah, see you guys at Countermeasures, I guess.
Wait a second. We never mentioned State of Statecraft. I saw TLP Black listed there as an advertiser. Did you make it out there, Costin?
I did not.
Ah, it was completely entirely off the record too, right?
It was somebody else. No, Kurt. Kurt was there, obviously.
Curtis was there.
I hear it was a very good event. Shout outs to Mike. And we really hope that we can make it to next year. I talked to Max. Max Meets about the overlap between Binding Hook and State of Statecraft. I think that the next year will be even amazing to somehow merge the two events. Just imagine like
back-to-back days,
one day of like high-level keynotes, philosophy, our favorite topics, applying general relativity to software development and computer security with an angle of black holes, dark matter, and dark energy, and
Man
a
knows
bit
how
of
to close the
quantum
show.
and entropy. I think will be just perfect. By the way, one of the latest and most interesting theories, I mean, it's been around for a while, but there's more and more evidence that this is actually true, is Stephen Wolfram's theory of the computing universe, like everything is software in a sense. And there's like more and more evidence, meaning like it's all about finding bugs in the software that is running the universe. Whoever finds these bugs and exploits them is whoever will be able to, I don't know, flying saucer their way out of the solar system, explore what is outside the simulation.
And then they're going to
so
sell that shit to the fucking Russians for a fake Rolex.
for a fake Rolex.
With that, we'll catch you next week. I'll see you guys in Ottawa, and I'm really looking forward to doing this podcast live in person next week.
Okay.
Cheers,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
Thanks for hanging out.
Bye-bye. There's some kind